Years 2023. How's everyone's doing? Great. Alright, without further ado, let's move on to our first session of the day. So the topic will be mainly about navigating the bug bounty landscape, operation security at scale. Miss Eileen Neo from the YesWeHack company are going to present the ideas. Please welcome Miss Eileen Neo to be on stage.
Of digitalization in the past few years, which has, caused a lot of problems for CISOs to keep up with the pace of this digitalization, as there are a lot more digital assets to protect today. On top of that, because of the push of business requirements, companies are forced to be more agile in their software development, which causes a huge issue between business needs and cybersecurity needs. And last but not least, there has been an increase in international regulations to comply to different standards. But despite all of these key four issues, a lot of companies today are still dependent on old-fashioned, traditional penetration testing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there are definitely gaps in traditional ways of penetration testing that we think could be done better. So what we do, which is bug bounty and VDP, is all about discovering vulnerabilities more effectively, and we think that there is a much better way to do that. So there are different ways where vulnerabilities are discovered, and I think to the right of the screen, these two scenarios would be the worst case scenarios that we do not want to happen. We do not want vulnerabilities to be exploited by malicious actors, for sure. That is the worst case scenario. We also do not want vulnerabilities to be publicly disclosed, because that is basically a time bomb waiting to go off, and companies would basically panic and try to fix this exposed vulnerability as fast as possible. So what we want ideally would be what is on the center of the screen to the left, which is we want vulnerabilities to be discovered internally, or at least privately disclosed to us, so that as a company we can fix it securely in our own time and pace. So where YesWeHack plays in would be to increase your chances of knowing about vulnerabilities privately, and we can do that through two channels. Bug bounty is basically an active way to discover vulnerabilities through ethical hackers, where you actually pay them a reward and you fix the vulnerability. Beside that would be a close sister to bug bounty, often confused, but they are completely different, vulnerability disclosure policy, VDP for short, where you simply thank the goodwill reporter and fix the vulnerability. So let's dive into bug bounty and VDP deeper as to how this tool actually works. We can start with bug bounty first, which is the active way of discovering vulnerabilities. So what is bug bounty? Essentially, it is getting an ethical hacker, and in this case for YesWeHack, we do verify every single one of them. And when they discover a vulnerability, also known as a security bug, and it needs to be discovered according to the company's rules, it's not the Wild Wild West, then they get paid according to how critical the vulnerability is, which is, as we know, low, medium, high, or critical. So essentially, the name bug bounty explains itself, where someone earns a bounty when he or she discovers a bug. A bug bounty platform like YesWeHack acts as the middle person between a global community of ethical hackers scattered across the world and our customers. There are two types of programs that people run on a bug bounty platform, and that is private versus public. I would say that most of our customers today are going with a private program where we manually select researchers to work with you, and it can be 1, 5, 50, 500, or 5,000 and more ethical hackers. A private program allows you a lot of control over who you invite and who you want to work with, so it is people feel more safe when they are working in a private program. Going public means that you expose your program to our entire community of ethical hacker, and that is quite scary for many people because it's really asking a global network of community of ethical hackers to hack into your systems. So most people start in private before they slowly move to public as they gain more confidence in their security posture. There are 5 key values in bug bounty. I would say the 3 points on the left of the screen would be the key ones that people look at. So first of all, as mentioned, because of digitalization, agility, and a lack of cybersecurity experts, we require bug bounty hunters to test assets continuously throughout the year. And this ensures that it matches the pace of criminals who are also able to test your assets throughout the year as well. The second point is that because we have a global network of ethical hackers, this provides very diverse perspectives when it comes to testing your assets. And as we know in cybersecurity, it is really vast. There is no one that knows everything. So if you provide an asset to hacker A, he would not necessarily find the same things as hacker B, C, or D. So that is why it is extremely important to engage with different testers who will be able to provide different perspectives and values to your table. And last but not least, the return of investment in bug bounty is extremely high as you only pay for valid vulnerabilities, and that means it has to be reproducible with real business impact. So there is no fluff in bug bounty as to someone providing good security practices, but they actually have to prove that they are able to do something with this vulnerability that they have discovered. And that means, companies would feel, I would say, good about every cent that they spend in bug bounty, given that it is actually mitigating a real cyber risk. So the last 2 points is that bug bounty can start, stop, or be edited at any time. It is not something that you run and it cannot be stopped. So it's really controllable, and you can run it for a day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or even better, continuously throughout the year. Last but not least, if you work with a bug bounty vendor, this entire engagement is highly managed, where the company only has to focus on fixing valid vulnerabilities, which means that cybersecurity professionals who are already busy do not have to spend more time to manage this project or engagement. So how a bug bounty program works is in 5 simple ways. So the first step is always to set up your rules of engagements. So you will let the ethical hackers know what scope you want them to test. it can be a web, mobile application, API, or even hardware, firmware. Anything that is hackable is testable in bug bounty. The second point is you would also have a list of qualifying or non-qualifying vulnerabilities. Very often we would exclude things like missing header, footer, missing cookie, etc., or self-cross-site scripting, because these do not really have proven security impact. And we focus on more, I would say, high and critical issues. The third point in the rules of engagements is to have a rewards grid set up so that the ethical hackers know how much you're going to pay for low, medium, high to critical. A lot of people wonder, how do we set this rewards grid? Well, the answer to that is YesWeHack will provide the necessary advice according to how difficult it is to test your scope and how secure it is to determine the rewards grid. So essentially, if it is harder to attack or hack into a system, then it merits a higher rewards grid versus an application that is very easy to hack in. And it makes sense as well. So step number 2 is that we will launch the program in private mode or public mode, depending on your risk appetite. So most of the organizations we're working with prefer to go private, where they're only able to work with a small group of researchers, from 5 all the way to 5,000 or more. Going public is indeed a very good testament that the company is very confident in your cybersecurity posture, but it is way harder to control the pace of vulnerabilities discovered, and thereby the budget is also hard to control as well in public. So private is really the way to go for most companies. The third step is YesWeHack will validate the vulnerabilities discovered to ensure that it is really valid and within the customer's rules. So what we do is that we check whether this vulnerability is indeed exploitable and what is its severity level. Is it something that is critical to the customer's business environment or not? So when we say low, medium, high to critical, this refers to the actual impact that it has on your business environment, and it is highly customizable to your way of rating the severity. So fourth step would be for the customer to fix the vulnerability if it is valid, since it is actually a security risk to the organization that is exploitable. And during the fixing process, the company will be able to discuss directly with YesWeHack or the ethical hacker if you ever have questions about how to fix it properly. So this two-way conversation is very interesting for many organizations, where they're able to get inside an ethical hacker's mind and to understand this vulnerability better. The last step is actually for YesWeHack or the ethical hacker to check that the fix is properly applied so that we properly close the loophole and ensure that it is no longer exploitable. So this would also be included in the engagement as well, and it's highly recommended as well for us to check that the fix is properly applied. The last slide that I have on bug bounty explains a little bit about how people begin to get into this great world of ethical hacking. So it is a step-by-step process where we start with a small program, which means limited scopes, restrictive rules, and a conservative rewards grid. And this would essentially get you comfortable with how bug bounty runs and how to deal with vulnerabilities that are coming in. So as the organization matures and you're able to deal with the continuous discovery of vulnerabilities, then that is where you can increase the scope that you're testing, increase the engagement, increase the number of hackers, and to continuously grow the program. So I'll move on to the next key service that we provide, which is VDP, Vulnerability Disclosure. VDP is essentially a passive public channel for anyone to report a vulnerability directly to your security team. And believe it or not, there are many, many goodwill researchers out there who have discovered a bug on their own, and they simply require a safe and secure way to inform the company about it. So without such a channel, it is very easy for businesses to miss out on important information that someone is trying to disclose to you. which is why we highly recommend having such a channel. In fact, if you look at some real-world case studies, there have been many cases of hackers trying to report vulnerabilities to companies who simply didn't have a way to properly receive it. So this screenshot over here showcases something that happened to Louis Vuitton, where an ethical hacker called Sabri tried to report a vulnerability to them. And you can see that it was forwarded to the marketing department, who rejected his sponsorship proposal. So in this case, obviously, he was angry, and he went onto Twitter to complain that this company doesn't know what a security vulnerability is. And because of this tweet, the company was able to fix the vulnerability because they knew about this happening. So this doesn't have to happen though. Why does someone have to report something? It's not properly managed and they have to complain about it on Twitter, or even worse, disclose details about your vulnerability. So this also shows why it's important to have a channel for people to report issues like this. Another case study would be Daniel, who is a CISO in an Australian company. He complained on LinkedIn that he tried to report vulnerabilities to several companies, but none of them bothered to, to speak back to him or to contact him back. And this is coming from, a chief information security officer, a pretty legitimate guy who is trying to do the good thing to report vulnerability, but it is not properly managed. So it really doesn't have to be this way. With a VDP, companies can have a way to properly manage this kind of disclosures, and to ensure that you fix vulnerabilities as soon as possible. So there are mainly 3 steps to setting up a VDP. It starts with drafting the policy. So this policy ensures that the reporters know what to expect when they are reaching out to your company. There are a few bullet points that I've placed here, but something that I want to really highlight is that there is no reward that the reporter should expect from a VDP channel. So this is very different from bug bounty, where someone actually earns money for finding a vulnerability. The key reason here is that you do not want to encourage people to hack your company. This is not an invitation to hack the company. It is mainly a passive channel. So if someone discovers something, they have a channel to tell you about it. The second step to setting up a VDP is to actually create a channel to receive the report. So many people think that having an email address is enough to receive this kind of reports, but we beg to differ. There are actually a lot of pitfalls when it comes to receiving vulnerabilities through simple emails. And first of all, emails are not usually encrypted, or the reporter would not bother to do it. So sensitive vulnerability information is sent across in plain text, which is definitely not a recommended security advice that anyone should give. Second of all, emails are really easy to delete or forward to the wrong person. So a lot of control is lost when a vulnerability is disclosed through an email address, or it could basically go into a spam or junk where no one ever sees it. The third point is there is no clear reporting structure when it comes to emails, and the reporter could miss out on very important information, and it requires a back and forth with the reporter, which is very frustrating for both the company and the reporter. So our solution to that, and why we offer VDP as a service, is that we have created a simple but powerful form to ensure that receiving vulnerabilities makes sense, and it's a secure way to do that. So a simple form like that serves a lot of purpose. First of all, security controls are baked into the process. This form is hosted on a website which has a Let's Encrypt cert, and the report is also PGP encrypted naturally in the user's browser as well, and doesn't require additional action from the reporter. And there is also CAPTCHA to prevent spamming as well. The second point is that having a structured form would basically distill as much information as possible from the reporter, and this reduces spam, reduces back and forth, and improves the report quality. Interestingly enough, we have also allowed the stamping of such reports into a private blockchain that we control, and this ensures that there is always a proof of deposit by the reporter. to ensure that no one can dispute that this report was ever sent in. Last but not least, the reports will be consolidated onto a platform where it is easy to manage and to ensure that the vulnerability is seen through remediation. The last part to a VDP is actually to deal with the report that came in. We can't just receive a report and do nothing about it. So these are 7 steps that we take to ensure that the report is properly managed. So we will receive it through a structured form. We will investigate into the issue. We will communicate with the reporter if necessary, even if he is extorting for money. That is something that YesWeHack can handle for you. We will also be able to, forward the report to the right person within your organization to remediate it, and to basically to follow through and monitor the time it takes to address a vulnerability. So this makes it extremely easy for a company to, have a VDP and also make use of the reports that are coming through. I think the last point is that before launching a VDP, most companies should consider holding a briefing for your key stakeholders to address some of the common concerns that they have, which is VDP an authorization to hackers? It is not. It is just a passive channel, and will reporters be prosecuted, etc. A lot of people, mistake VDP for a bug bounty, and they want to report people through a VDP. This actually does a lot more harm than good, where once you start offering money on the VDP, that is where you kind of open the door to ethical hackers to suggest that you would be willing to pay them. And this would invite a lot of, hackers that are not really good at what they do, and they're just trying to beg for money from this channel. So we highly discourage this kind of behavior. And if you really want to reward researchers, having a bug bounty program is the way to go. So just to summarize the 2 differences between the services, it's essentially an active versus a passive approach. So bug bounty is actively getting researchers to look for vulnerabilities, and you will pay them, basically. Whereas a VDP is more for people to fulfill their civic duty. If they discover a vulnerability on their own and you didn't ask them to, then they should have a way to tell you about it so that you can fix it. So just to conclude, these are some of the key issues that we are solving in the market, and it has been proven to work extremely well. In fact, in Malaysia, most people don't know, but a lot of key organizations here are already engaged in bug bounty and VDP, just in a private mode. So it is not publicly publicized, and which is why many people don't know who are doing bug bounty within Malaysia or any other country, unless you know the people who are running this in the organization. We do believe that it is not wise to just rely on traditional methods anymore, given that there is a huge disconnection between what the pace of cybercrime is happening versus the point-in-time check that most organizations are familiar with. So we think that if we want to go beyond compliance, then crowdsourced security is quite hard to ignore anymore. Even if you look at a lot of government agencies in every country, most of them are already having conversations with us or other, bug bounty vendors to understand how this can be implemented throughout the country. So yeah, it's really not a question whether to run a bug bounty or VDP, but rather a question of when and where to start. So I think with that, I can wrap up the discussion, and thank you very much for your attention and being here.
Thank you very much to our Miss Eileen for the brilliant presentations. Any question from the ground so far? Is there any question? All right, I think that's the end of the first session for today. So just stay until 11. We have another session, which will be presentation by our Mr. Pratik here from Sentinel-1 about ransomware. All right, so please don't go anywhere and stay until the end of the show. All right. Thank you, Miss Eileen.